So, welcome back to our final session on day one of the Circular Materials Conference. We hope you've had an absorbing time in the breakouts. We've just got a quick fire final session to really stimulate some further thought as you disappear out into the sun, snow, or whatever is going on outside. Through today, one can't help but get a feeling that there's some amazing work going on from the research, the innovation, and the business side that is taking us towards circularity. I dare hope that we're on the pathway. But as always, these are the best ideas and solutions taking place. The reality is what is going on in the world outside, and do all these efforts really begin to add up to the sort of fundamental transition that we require to reach circularity, not just for its own sake, but because it's a response to the raw materials crisis, the ecological crisis, the climate crisis that are affecting us increasingly. So in this last session, we thought we'd have a thought piece from someone who's been working in this world for a while. John Haag, great to have you with us, Chief Circular Officer at And Repeat. It's a new startup, which I think is building on work you've been doing very much in the packaging sustainability arena for many years. But we've invited you along because I think you'll have a unique knack or a good knack in being able to climb above the applied detail to maybe have a look at an overview as to whether everything we're doing adds up to a row of beans and we're getting there, or whether we really are meeting the circularity challenge at the scale and the pace we need to. So we thought we would give you unfettered access to the conference for 15 minutes to offer us just some provoking thoughts. And then after that, I'll just have a chat with you and anybody and everybody who is on. If you want to offer a response, a message, a thought, preferably not an insult, then please do it through the chat session, because we want this to be as sparky as possible. But the challenge is to become circular. Where are we at and what do we need? Over to you, John.
Thank you very much. And I try to intertwine then a little bit my thinking and my conclusions from the day with actually what we are doing at And Repeat, of course. So I'm very glad to be here. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And we've heard today a lot of companies with actually bold visions. I think that's fantastic. We have heard about a lot of new techniques. We hear about new recycling. We hear about upcycling. Fantastic. Mechanical development. We hear chemical development. We have IoT, digitalization, standardization. We have. It's like a smorgasbord, and it's boiling out there. But this will cost a little bit more than most of the people think, and it will take longer time than we actually have time with. So there are some challenges, and I just try to summarize that a little bit now. And I hope that sharing my screen is done already. So I work at And Repeat nowadays, and just very briefly about And Repeat, we are building a platform for circular packaging in food service. Why in food service, you can ask, because that's the worst kind of packaging that we have. Not when it comes to material or quality, it actually may be the best quality that you can find in packaging, but we are not recycling it. So here we say less than 20% is actually 1 out of 10 packaging that goes into the recycling whatsoever, and then not all of them are even recycled. So very, very much is incinerated. As you heard from Peter, we are a fairly new company. So we launched the system in Stockholm, December 1st. And now we are 140, I would say this week, 150 restaurants using the system. We need to brand it a lot because we need to learn consumers how to use it. And now when you enter a restaurant with this deposit scheme that we have, you actually pay 2 Swedish krona extra for the packaging, and then you can get 4 credits, which are then when you buy your next meal in any of those restaurants, they are a valid 4 krona each. So we have a specific incentive right now. And this is actually our way, we think, to overcome some of the challenges, because now I get to the 12 minutes that was actually then what I would like to talk about. So I summarize almost everything in this slide. So I hope I can keep you for the last minutes of the day here. The first point is that it is partly a scary way forward for most companies, because you have an existing business. You have been doing things for 10 years, 50 years, 100 years. Some of them, like Stora Enso, 700 years. And now you're going to do something differently, perhaps. And then we have those problems. The first one, we are, for many years, it hasn't happened much enough, you could say. So we are entering into a blame game scenario, and I will talk shortly about that soon. And a blame game is never fun, because then everyone has to put their efforts to avoid being banned or taxed or having a new disadvantage on the market that you didn't have yesterday. The next one, number 2, is huge investment is needed to go from linear to circular. And it's much, much, much more investment needed than you maybe think of. And it is not enough that because in an old world, when you were a value chain, maybe your company was the B step in the value chain, or the C step, or the D step, somewhere in the value chain. And in a circular economy, all parts of the value cycle has to do something at the same time. Otherwise, you won't see the impact. So that's why we have to have more investments at the same time, and that's a challenge. And the third one, large companies, they talk a lot. They have bold visions. They want to do good, but still they give away more money than they invest. And it's going to be a problem, and I'm going to show you later on. However, the upsides, if you like, can be massive, because in a circular world, you can actually charge for jobs done, not for a kilogram of a material. And that means that you can charge for something several times, several years. So the profitability will come in the end, and it might be even better than today. You could also charge for the level of circularity, because we know that legislation are heading towards circularity, meaning that the ones that can offer a better circular situation for their customers in an ecosystem, they can actually charge more and more and more. Otherwise, the planet won't survive. And we can have new business models, and we can increase utilization rates of materials with extracting less virgin material. So the upsides can be massive. Number 1, and this is a very texty image, so don't try to read it now. You will have the presentations afterwards. But as you see, we are now in what we call stuck in the mud game, because we have a lot of materials. It could be metals, it could be steel, it could be plastics, packaging, textiles, batteries. We have heard a lot of the stories today, and we are a little bit stuck in the mud because we have started to recycle, but we don't use them in a valuable manner several times in most of the cases. And then when too little happen, we see on the x-axis here, you have stakeholder pressure. That could be both consumers, NGOs, politicians, and so on. They want more to happen, because otherwise they will not stay in place for the next mandate period or whatever. Meaning that we are now heading quickly into a blame game, when we're going to have new taxes, new bans for solutions that someone says is bad for the environment or bad for circularity. On the y-axis, you have value-creating innovation, and that will happen much less in a blame game scenario, because then industries need to try to fit for the new legislations or fit for the new game rules every year or every second year, and the money will flow in the wrong direction, not into value-creating innovation. But if we could reach a scenario, for example, you could say what we see now with some part of new car batteries when you recycle them in a new way, or we have seen in PET bottles where you almost have a closed loop and you actually start using the old PET like rPET for new PET bottles, then you can find areas where you actually create something that is lasting. And then you can do it profitable and you can reach a higher degree of circularity. And of course, what we're heading for, the vision for everyone, is the circular dawn scenario, when politicians, industries, consumers, everyone are heading against the same end goal, and then we actually pay a little bit more for the best solutions and so on, but we are not there yet. So that's the challenge. But the first one, we're heading to the blame game, and that's not a good thing. The second point I pointed out was that it's going to take much more investments than most realize. So this is from a scenario analysis done when I was working at RISE last year, as you can see. And we see that to fulfill the 2030 agreement, we need to then reduce the usage of virgin plastics in packaging with almost 50% in 10 years. And you also heard today, if you listen to one of the 3B stream, I think, that the European plastic strategy says that we should use 10 million tons more recycled plastic 2030 in products, and some of them will be packaging. And it's a massive step. We have to do a lot more than we're doing today to get there, meaning that we should almost quadruple all the R&D investments, the infrastructure investments, collection, sorting, upcycling techniques, and so on, need to be 4 times as big in packaging as we see today. And if we look, for example, in textiles, it's probably almost 10 times as high investments than we see today. The upside, however, would be that with new business models where you actually charge several times for the same material, for example, or when you charge for jobs done in society or for consumers, you can earn money several times for the same material. Perfect. We could unlock savings in the world for 200 billion a year, and it could mean 700,000 new jobs. So the question here is, who should take the first steps? And we need more companies that actually dare to take the first steps. But what we see then is that still we know all those challenges with circularity and the new investments we have to see. When we look at the listed companies in the world, and this is the Swedish example, 2019, in Sweden, we had a total investment from the state government and from private companies of 150 billion SEK. At the same time, the companies alone on the stock exchange in Stockholm gave away 258 billions. And it's increasing, as you can see from this. And it's almost for every country that you give away much more of your profit than you invest in your own ideas, meaning that we almost say to each other, we don't have the good ideas ourselves. We give away the money and hope that someone else will fix the problems. And that's not a good situation. So that's one of the big challenges as I see it. Then back to and repeat, just as an example, because we have a lot of broken systems out there, as we have heard today, when it comes to plastics, to electronics, to packaging, to textile, to wind power station, and all those composites. We need to do things differently. And today, most markets have like the extended producer responsibility fees. And those will not work because there is never money left for someone to improve the systems with the EPR systems. So we need to think in new ways. And what we then try in packaging is that having a deposit scheme, when the deposit rate is a little bit lower, you have money over to actually invest in the system to make it better. And when then the deposit rates increase and they reach a very high level, then probably you have fixed the system a bit already. So this is one way to actually finance how to make the broken system into a new, modern, better system again. And my conclusion out of this, and maybe out of this day as well, as we have heard, I would say that we must prioritize value retention much, much higher than efficiency for a while. Because if we are going from a linear economy into a circular economy, this needs that you can't have the same efficiency from day one as you have had in a linear economy where everyone have practiced for 50 years or 100 years. So you need to down prioritize efficiency for a while. And then when you have volume in your new business models, then you can say that now we can put efforts into efficiency again. So by using, for example, a deposit scheme, would we have consumers being afraid, or would they be reluctant? And we have asked them, of course. And this is a survey with interviews that we've done with people both using the system and not using the system yet. And what we see is that 87% of all people actually say that it's very positive to have a deposit scheme to change the behavior and to increase recycling rates. And it's very few people that today are negative for trying new methods of financing like a deposit scheme. So that is then my final message. Go out there and try new business models. Maybe I should stop share so you can see me. Try new business models. You must prioritize value retention over efficiency for a while. You should increase investments. So in a modern company of today, R&D and innovation would be like 2 to 5% of your revenue. Otherwise, you might be dead in a few years' time. And you should do those three things that I mentioned together with others, and probably together with competitors as well, because everyone has to change if we should reach circularity. Thank you.
John, thank you very much. Some very stimulating thoughts coming out there. And as you say, the detail of your presentation is going to be available. I reach out to the world looking in. People are going to look in two ways, John. Some people hanging on to the rigging of day one of the conference live. And if you're one of those and you want to push back or make a suggestion or ask a question of John, then do it on the chat board on the Circular Materials Conference platform. If you've worked your way how to navigate around that. The second thing is the presentation will be available so you can relax and think about things at your leisure, or if you're joining this conference not live but at a later date, then that information is available. But maybe I just a couple of thoughts with you, John. I suppose I'm just interested that we're almost at the most difficult point in all this, in that we're actually growing up in realizing what needs to be done, and also with our amazing research and innovation capability, finding that there are things we can do to transform business models, techniques, and all the rest of it. And yet the whole markets are just not quite there yet. I'm just wondering, you talk about a push coming from potentially consumers being involved in this. If you had an observation about society through its politics and its policy making, both at European and at national Nordic level, do you kind of feel, yeah, they're doing all they can at the moment to create the right playing field for this, or is your sense that actually that's a huge area that needs development? If these issues really are as serious as we think, I'm just wondering whether the political process transformed into policy making is fit for purpose for the challenge we have. Do you want to just make an observation on
that? Yes, I can try. I think I think that they are a little bit too, how do you say, sneaky. So as politicians today, they either make a very concrete statement and maybe then add a ban on something, or they just fine-tune a little bit on legislations, meaning that the gray zone, the businesses or the organizations in between is not really impacted or affected enough, you could say. And then there is, I would say that they are maybe afraid of, and I probably would be myself if I was a politician, that I take decisions that actually put some out of the market and gaining market for the other ones just overnight. And I think that is maybe the biggest problem now, that we don't really want to push too much on the best solutions, because that might be unfair. But the planet might need us to be unfair.
Yeah. Interesting. And it could be, I mean, if we look at the climate change issue, we've kind of been pushing a sort of a stone up a hill at the moment. I mean, just the change in the atmosphere that's come from the American election suddenly means that there's a race to ambitious targets. I mean, the UK put together some amazing targets for CO2 net reduction. That was announced just yesterday. So maybe we are on the cusp of something very big happening here. We're just in that sort of awkward moment where we of kind of maximum awareness but minimum activity. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. And then also I see that when you're working with quite expensive products, or so each unit costs a lot, then you actually can afford to play around more, both as politician and as a company. But we have heard a lot today about, for example, packaging or plastic parts or building pipes for building and water systems, and those are not so costly, meaning that those companies are not playing around enough either, because it's hard to finance. So, but again, you need to be creative then in finding that financing. For example, you could do it yourself, you could do it with new business models, or you could do it in other ways.
Yes, yeah. And the dear old consumer in all this, I sometimes wonder whether we put enough faith in them and really engage with them sufficiently. I sort of, and obviously within the food and packaging world, the consumer is very close to this whole world, and I'm just intrigued again from your experience. I think you were talking about deposit schemes and things, so we were actually investing in circularity. I mean, you genuinely feel that there's a real opportunity to kind of unleash the hearts, the minds, and the purpose and the purses of the consumer to really be a positive part of this transition.
Yes, I think, but again, it's never totally fair. So you can see a lot of examples. I mean, if you see at the electric cars, where you have had a lot of bonus malus system in Norway, much more people buy electric cars than the other cars. If you see in Sweden, where you have had a tax reduction or a compensation for installing heat pumps, then you see that people do that, even if it's not really paying off the 10 years when you're going to live there yourself. And then sometimes you're happy because the market price of houses or apartments have increased so much, so you get the money back anyhow if you live in a large city anyhow. But again, it's not fair to everyone.
Yeah.
And I think consumers are ready to do more and to actually pay more if they know exactly why they are doing it.
Yeah. And we had a lovely presentation from Precious Plastic this morning, which was how you kind of galvanize the enthusiasm of local, streets, communities to actually. This was about reprocessing plastic, but I thought it was an amazing example of how you engaged the sort of spirit and enthusiasm of people to be part of the change, because otherwise it's all bad news and it's waste and it's incinerators and it's landfill and it's too difficult. So that was quite interesting. Just taking it to the opposite level from the consumer, say at an EU level, just interesting. We've got the EU Green Deal coming down the track. We've got the COVID recovery fund, mega billions and trillions of euros, and the COVID recovery fund potentially with conditions attached that we go back better. I'm just wondering, are you detecting, maybe it's not within your purview and pay grade, but are you detecting that that is allowing for the sort of subsidizing of new business models and research and development? Someone's just put a message on chat, just wondering whether EU is or could do more to be part of the incentivizing and actually funding R&D and new business models and risk taking.
Yeah, I think so, and I think the time is much more mature now than just 10 years ago, because for me, working with then material innovation, even 10 years ago, two competitors would never work in the same project. But today we see that even very fierce competitors, they work together, because recycling, they can't fix a recycling system in every country themselves. So when we have, for example, the big drink brands or the big shampoo brands and everything, and they actually join forces and build consortia or groups of projects, then actually EU also dare to subsidize or maybe finance projects, because it's not favoring one brand. It's favoring all countries. So that's why I think Green Deal will actually succeed in many areas by doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, John, we've been at it for 7 hours today. We've been overwhelmed with just amazing examples and more particularly amazing people who are doing research, taking risks within companies. You yourself setting up and repeat. There are plenty of easier ways of getting a little bit of bread on your table. And actually tomorrow we're going to hear of a project in the textile section, which is people turning waste bread and the fungus from that into textiles. So, well, wherever you look, there's potential. But for now, if I could say thank you very much for stimulating us with some very, I think, timely and significant thoughts about how we take this to the next stage, and that real need to get that investment in. Because it will reap rewards. So if I could, John, thank you very much indeed for your intervention this afternoon and wish you well with your activities. And to everyone who stayed with us through the afternoon, thank you for your participation. To all the speakers thank you for your participation. This is but day one of a 2-day conference. So we've got all sorts of interesting breakouts and keynote presentations tomorrow. So have a relaxing evening, get some fresh air, and we will see you tomorrow at 8:30 Central European Time for 7 or 6 hours more of really fascinating insights into the evolution towards true circularity and the role that the Nordic countries are taking in this. I'm feeling energized and inspired, slightly knackered, and I'm going to, as ever, take my cue from the cat and have a bit of a snooze now. But John, thank you. Everybody, thank you. And we will see you bright and early tomorrow morning. All the best. Thank you.